Greetings all. My name is Paris and I'm your 7th grade facilitator, your middle school facilitator. I'm going to be giving you an overview of what is going to be covered for the week of September 26th through the 30th. So the week of September 26th through the 30th, if you look at the scope and sequence, the first 2 days are staff development days, and then you have a flex day on Wednesday. And then your 2 days that you are covering content, you're going to be covering TEK 710C, and your objective is to have students be able to write a word problem based on a given equation. On Friday, 711C, students are going to have to set up and solve two-step equations with geometric concepts. So I talked about the TEKs in the previous slide. 710C, write a corresponding real-world problem given a one-variable two-step equation or inequality. Remember, this week we're only covering this week we're only covering equations. The following week we will cover inequalities. 711C, write and solve equations using geometry concepts, including the sum of the angles in a triangle and angle relationships. So each TEK has been tested 4 times in 5 years. They're both supporting TEKs, and they, as you can see here, just 1 year it hasn't been tested, but it's about 1 question per year. I'm going to jump right into Thursday of the next week. So again, students are going to write a real-world problem given an equation. The previous week, they were given a problem and they had to write an equation. Now they're going to do the opposite here. I'm going to show you a few things. The first thing we're going to look at is the field guide, and the second thing we're going to look at is the item analysis. And then I'll show you what's available to you in the curriculum in Eduphoria. Let's go ahead and get started. In Eduphoria, you'll be able to find this field guide. This field guide is where basically we get all of the information that we use to build our lessons. So you have that at your access, and you should definitely be using that to prep before you go into PLCs with your team. We're going to look at our first TEK that we're covering on Thursday. So on Thursday, we're looking at 710C. So I'm going to scroll here to 710C, and let's just go ahead and start looking at that. In 6th grade, remember, over on this section, it kind of tells you what was covered in previous grades. This is a new concept to 7th grade. Solving equations is new to them in 7th grade, solving two-step equations. They solve one-step equation in 6th grade. They are also going to need to be able to write the equations. So here are some of the academic vocabulary that has shown up on the STAR test. A lot of these are specific to inequalities, but we have equation here, the variable. Those are 2 terms that students need to be able to understand whenever we're writing equations. So instructional implications, students write corresponding real-world problems given one variable two-step equations or inequalities. For example, and I'm going to look at this one here. One variable two-step equation. So this is the equation here. 6x plus 4 equals 46. John has 46 sodas, so that's our total. For the picnic, how many 6-packs of soda did he buy if he already had 4 sodas? So 4 right there is our constant, and then the 6-pack is going to be our variable term. So students need to be able to determine what's the total, what's the variable term, and then what's the constant. They also need to be able to understand if the constant is being added or subtracted, if the variable term is being added or subtracted. Some of the misconceptions that students have, most of them for this TEK, is going to be all about inequalities, but the one here that they have listed for equations is confusing the rate of change m with the constant b. So that's that variable term and that constant term I talked to you about. Now let's go to Lead Forward and talk about some of the STAR release problems. So remember, you can go in and click what TEK you're looking at, you're wanting to see. I did 710C, and there was a problem from 2022. They are asking which situation is best represented by the following equation. So they have an equation, and all 4 answer choices are a verbal description. Students need to go through and determine which of the following represents that equation there. So let's look at A. I'm going to look at each answer choice. An office manager paid $675 to build a website. And when we're looking at this, some things that may pop out to your students, what you want to emphasize to your students is this right here is the total, of course. And so whatever it is we're buying, selling, building, earning, that's our total. This is our variable term, which means $68.50 each, for every, per. That's going to be a big identifier for the variable term in word problems. And this is our constant term, and notice it's being added. So let's look at this. An office manager paid $675.95 to build a website. An office manager bought a software package for $68.50 and paid an employee $127.95 for each hour she worked on the website. So the equation here, the total $675 is correct, but again, that thing that's going to stick out to students is $127.95 for each. And so A would not be a correct response because they don't have the variable term with the correct number. An office manager paid for B $675.95. Again, the total is correct. They're paying for some computer equipment. The office manager bought one monitor for $127.95 and hard drives for $68.50 each. What is X, the number of hard drives the office manager bought? So again, this one, $127.95, and the hard drives are $68.50 each. That sounds about right. The total is correct, but let's keep going. A sales manager paid $675.95. Again, same thing, correct total. The sales manager paid $127.95 per hour for consulting and received a $68.50 discount. What is the total number? What is X? The number of hours the manager spent for consulting. So again, this one, the total is correct. The $127.95 per hour, that is a dead giveaway for students that the $127.95 is supposed to be with the X if C were correct. Also, when we're receiving a discount, what happens to the money that we're paying? It's being subtracted. We're receiving a discount for $68.50. That should be minus $68.50. So C is not correct. And D, business owner paid a total of $675.95. So that's correct. To 2 employees that worked the same number of days. They paid one employee $68.50, and then they paid the second employee $127.95 per day. What is X, the number of days the employees worked? If you look here, $127.95 per day is supposed to be with the variable, and so D is incorrect here. This is pretty much what the expectation is students are given an equation and they have to find a verbal situation that matches. If you want to amp up this TEK, I'll show you guys when we get to the notes. In 2021, there was a similar problem, although it was written a little bit different, not in your normal y equals mx plus b form. And then the equations and inequalities, remember, are both in this TEK. So there's some inequalities as well. So that's pretty much the STAR release questions. Now let's take a look at what's in Eduphoria. In Eduphoria, you will find the same information that we found on our field guide, what the prior knowledge is. You'll find the TEK and the objective. Remember the misconception here, we talked about confusing the constant rate of change M with B. Our notes are pretty scaffolded for students. And so definitely a gradual release model student should be able to do. There's 3 examples. They should be able to do a few of them on their own. So they're given a verbal description here, and they are needing to take and pick apart the verbal description and go ahead and write the equation. And so here are the actual teaching strategies, and the key to this The check-in is, there's going to be 2 correct answers. So it's really pushing the students and their knowledge to try to get a better understanding of what it is that they know and don't know here. Okay, so that's pretty much that. If you want to amp it up a bit for some of your kids that are doing pretty well with this, you may want to give them an equation and let them create their own verbal description or their own problem. So that is a way to amp it up for students. So that's Thursday. Friday. On Friday, we will take a look at TEK 711C, and this is solving 2-step equations with geometric concepts. Students are going to need to solve an equation, set up an equation, and solve an equation using some geometric concepts. Let's look at what the expectations are from the field guide, the STAR released items, and then we'll take a look at what's doing for you. 711C. 711C, we have again over here where what their prior knowledge is. 711C, there's some academic vocabulary that has not been used on STAR tests, but students absolutely need to know in order to be able to solve these equations and set these equations up correctly. So for example, they need to know what a complementary and supplementary angle is, what a vertical angle is, a straight angle, of course, what an angle is, the perimeter, the volume. Over here, for instructional implications, students need to be able to write an equation if they ask for the perimeter of a rectangle. They need to be able to understand how to find the perimeter of a rectangle, but they also need to be able to find and set up an equation that involves the sum of triangles and angle relationships. So for example, here's an image, here's a triangle, there's a right angle there is another angle for 37 degrees and 2x. So they will need to be able to write an equation to model what this image has here for us. Some of the misconceptions that students can have, they can definitely solve the equation, but then not plug it back in to find the solution to the problem. And I'll show you that. They can confuse complementary and supplementary angles, and that's why I said that vocabulary for this one is really important. They can also not use the formulas that are provided on the reference materials and kind of just miss and disregard that. And then sometimes they cannot recognize that the 90-degree angle is represented by that square symbol. Let's look at some of the STAR items. So there's about, like I said, 1 question each year. So there was one in 2022. In 2022, they said angle F and H are supplementary angles. And so yay, now they use the word supplementary. And so students need to know that supplementary angles are 2 angles that have the measure whose sum equals 180. And so that is a quick and easy way for them to be able to eliminate 3 answer choices. Both of these angles, when you add them together, they equal 180. So G is the correct answer. If they had asked for complementary angles, then H would have been the correct answer. If they had asked about, they said the 2 angles are equal, then F would have been the correct or congruent. Then F would have been the correct answer. So again, that vocabulary is super important. Let me show you what is available to you in Eduphoria. In Eduphoria, again, the same things are available to you here. The new concepts, the older concepts. 1 step was previous, and then there's an extra step. Same misconceptions that were pointed out in the field guide are here. So there's a Pear Deck along with this, so students can follow along. And I'll just scroll down to the key for you. Remember, I talked about that vocabulary being very important. Here's the vocabulary here for you. So definitely take advantage of that vocabulary. Have students look at the figure, set up the equation, do some turns and talks, share with each other what's the difference between a complementary, supplementary angle, and so on and so forth. Have them set these equations up, and your teaching strategies are here as well. So that's in for update. So the notes in Eduphoria are pretty straightforward for you that day. The week of October 3rd through the 7th is the district checkpoint. You also have a flex day before the district checkpoint. Use that however you see fit. Please get with your PLCs and see what the needs of your students on your campuses are, and definitely utilize extra resources that are there. If you're using something else and it works for your kids, please let me know so I can share that with others. After the district checkpoint, we're going to jump into inequalities. So that is pretty much what to expect, and that was for the week of the 26th through the 30th. Before you go, please go ahead and provide some feedback on this video if it was helpful to you. If it was not helpful to you, give us some feedback so we can know how to better assist you with the content that comes up for the week. There's also going to be some office hours on the 20th from 4 to 4:30. Thank you so very much.